I am delighted to bring you 75 brand new two-sentence horror stories submitted by commenters just like you. I just want to say before we begin, I'm just truly overwhelmed by the number of people submitting. It just makes me so happy. I hope people continue to do this, and I would love to continue to read them. Officer Michaels felt sick when he saw the horrible massacre in the school cafeteria. His feelings then turned to grief and horror when he recognized the two shooters as his son and daughter. As the dark clouds gathered in the sky, Tobias stood staring at them, a paintbrush and a bucket at his side. He ran as the clouds loomed. He wondered if he could put the blood on his family's doorpost before the angel of death arrived. Todd had reached his breaking point with his overbearing wife and decided to poison her. He snickered quietly as he watched her slip away after taking a sip of tea. But his laughter stopped when his wife's eyes suddenly sprang open and snarled, "Nice try. Now it's your turn." When she was caught on the web, Kara was alarmed. But when she saw a gigantic spider slowly approaching, she became terrified. Bob couldn't understand why he was having trouble remembering his wife's name. His brother's words sent despair through him. "Ugh, you've never had a wife, Bob. Now it's time for your medication." Stepping out of the woods, Noah felt relief that he had escaped the crazed mountain man who had been chasing him. He suddenly felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up as he felt the sharp pain of a knife being stabbed into his back, and he heard a raspy voice hiss, "Found you." As a girl, Lucy was told that if you follow a rainbow to its end, you'd find a pot of gold. One day, she did just this, and found that there was no pot of gold, only a very hungry and homicidal leprechaun. Henderson felt his heart race as he was led down the corridor towards the gas chamber. The officer holding him by an arm leered at him. "Here we are," he chuckled. "I hope you suffer," he said, opening the door. "You first," just before he stabbed the officer through the heart. Seeing the world outside his house crumble, Edward silently cursed the one who caused it. His anger suddenly spiked as he saw the hand of the gurgling, drooling destructor who crawled on four legs reach out and pick him up before bringing it towards its drooling open mouth. One night, Alexis had a nightmare that all her teeth had fallen out. Upon awakening, she was relieved, but seeing blood on her sheets and feeling it drip from her mouth, she began to wish she was still dreaming. Finding himself lost in the woods, Hank was relieved to spy a cabin and ran towards it. But upon opening the door and seeing the bone-shaped furniture, he immediately turned heel and raced back towards the woods. After learning to time travel, Pete made a promise to himself that he would use the new skill with responsibility and not harm anyone from the past. That was until he found himself in a hospital room and hearing a doctor say, "Don't worry, Frau Hitler, just one more big push." "It is going to be hot as hell," Ethan heard the weatherman say. He sighed, failing to notice the curved horns on top of the weatherman's head. Gary, Gary felt himself drifting off as the nitrous oxide took effect. The last thing he saw was the dentist holding a large knife and raising it into the air while saying, "Do you remember me? Do you remember when you murdered my daughter?" As he looked down at the bottomless abyss, James wondered silently what was actually down there. He realized he would soon find out when he felt the hand of his deeply disturbed wife push him on the back and over the side of the cliff. "Mommy, look," said little Amy, pointing. "A really big kitty," the mother suddenly gripping tightly to her daughter as the bobcat turned to face them, then prepared itself to spring. Entering the bathroom, Ray smiled as he looked in the mirror. His smile disappeared when he realized that all he could see was black and saw the faces of the two frightened children staring back at him. While swimming, Alvin thought he felt something tug at his leg. He laughed, thinking it was his little brother, but his laughter immediately died when he saw the blood bubbling up, which was followed by his foot. Snow White smiled as she watched all 7 dwarves slump forward right after finishing the applesauce she had prepared for them. Yes, she knew the apple was poisoned, but it was the only way she could have the house all to herself. Laying on his back next to his little sister, Gabe began pointing out the shapes the clouds were making to her. "That one looks like a sailboat. And that one's a kitty cat." He suddenly felt his blood go cold when he heard her call out, "That one looks like a skull and crossbones. Why is it all red?" As he ran down the path, Freddy stopped to catch his breath. He suddenly clutched his throat and fell to the ground as he realized the robed man with the scythe had taken it already. Upon hearing the cries of his newborn son, Jake could not have been happier, but once he saw the child, it dawned on Jake that a normal baby did not have fangs and claws. 911, what is your emergency?" said the dispatcher, taking the call that had just come in. A sudden chill ran down her spine when she recognized the quavering voice that whispered, "Mommy, help. There's a masked man in the house, and he just got Daddy." The cops said it was a bear, but bears don't leave notes at the scene of the crime. Reports from space say that there could be life on other planets. Then they discovered this was no living being. The teacher muted us any time we talked and removed the chat box during the WebEx call. I wish she hadn't done that, so we could have warned her about the red-eyed figure behind her. As the room began to fill with water, Harvey couldn't help praying. He then heard a voice above him call out, "Why didn't you get on the ark when you had the chance?" Locke sighed as he stood outside of the courtroom. He quickly checked to make sure the gun he was carrying was still loaded. Any minute now, the man who had brutally murdered his 5-year-old would be coming out, and he wanted to make sure he was ready for him. Mono felt tears streaming down his face as he was told that his wife and daughter had both been shot and killed in a holdup gone wrong. After the police had gone, he picked up the phone and placed a call to the hitman to thank him for a job well done. As she grew older, Lindsay no longer believed that there was a monster under her bed. However, the furry fanged and clawed creature that now sat at the end of it was a different story. As he drove down the road, Craig began to ponder about life. He then came to the conclusion that his was meaningless, so immediately headed for the nearest tree. As he awakened from the surgery, Henry asked the doctor if the surgery went well, and he would be able to live a long, healthy life in his new body. Henry smiled and sighed with relief. "Thank you so much for everything, Dr. Frankenstein," he said. My family helped me out with my schizophrenia and told me to take a pill so the monsters will go away. I took the pill, and as I opened my eyes, the monsters were closer. As the baby was dunked into the water, its skin started peeling and burning. The priest said, "That's never happened before." If there is a red bracelet on someone in the hospital in North Korea, it means the patient is dead. I went on the elevator, and waiting for me there was someone in a red bracelet. I begged and begged my dad for a new puppy, but he always said no. Now I won't have anything to eat. "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." That was the last story I heard before the bombs dropped. My 5-year-old baby sister went missing this afternoon, but instead of gathering search parties, people started to lock themselves in their homes. Whenever I have a staring contest, I always win. What they do not know is that I cut my eyelids off. When I was being followed by a car, I looked in the driver's seat window to ask what the driver's problem was. But there was no driver. Don't worry about the shuffling in the burlap sack. That's just my son. My mother always said, it doesn't matter how slow you go, as long as you don't stop. I've been running for 2 hours now, and her screams of insanity are still following me. My father always told me, never get too close to the fire. But then why is he pushing me towards it? After the death of his daughter, Damien told the genie that he wished that everyone who had ever lived was given a second chance. He rethought his choice when she and him were gutted by Jack the Ripper 3 weeks later. I shot and killed a man 2 days ago because he claimed that he was Thanatos, the Greek god of death. I thought nothing of it, until it was reported that day and yesterday, the human race suffered no fatalities. I entered my time portal to escape the apocalypse. It wasn't until I was in the past I noticed a green scratch on my leg. I'm sorry. My mom said she would be up in a few minutes to tuck me in for bed. That was 3 hours ago, and the screams haven't stopped. As the peanut butter stuck to the roof of my mouth, I walked to the refrigerator When I opened the glass door, I gasped. I had forgotten to buy milk. I was so joyous when I realized my wish for immortality was granted, as I can feel my bones turning to dust 400 years later. I realized I should have wished for eternal youth as well. They always tell you suicide is selfish because of all of the people it hurts. They never tell you about the hurt you endure when you survive. As I was taking the end-of-year finals, a friend passed me a note in class. The note read, "I told you not to come to school tomorrow." Last night, I heard crying coming from my front porch, and when I opened the door, I found a basket with a baby inside. But when I saw the tiny horns on the baby's head, I slammed the door and locked it. People always ask me, why are you more scared of alien abductions than the ones that can be done by criminals? They never quite understand that while we are limited by the cost of fuel, you can never outrun the Greys. More than 600,000 persons go missing in the United States every year. Why do so many of them happen near cave systems? As a kid, I absolutely loved the Men in Black film and the animated series that came after. Since I saw that thing land in the sea, though, they're no laughing matter. Our lives have been wonderful since we found our faith. Everything seems so much clearer. Once the needle pierces your skin, you'll understand too. "Hello, darkness, my old friend," I quietly said to my coworker in the elevator. "Aw, that's so sweet. Have you missed me?" she asked with an oversized and sharp grin as the lights flickered off. As I drove through the night, the unwelcomed arrived. The car lurched to a halt with nothing besides the check engine light illuminated. My newborn looks just like her father. It makes me so happy. But I just hope no one else at the candlelight vigil notices the resemblance. Me and my friend went ghost hunting. We took a quick look at the building from the outside with our thermal camera. I don't know what scared me more, seeing a heat reading in the building I knew had been abandoned for decades, or not seeing a reading from my friend. I never expected my son to be so tough, but hey, it was my first time eating human flesh. I hadn't gotten to his soft hands yet. You know that old saying, you don't have to outrun the bear, just your friend? They never did say what to do if you're the friend in that statement. They say you should live in the moment because tomorrow may never come. If they only knew how right they were. If death can set me free, why can't I escape? I cried after my mother's death. My cries only got louder when I realized she wouldn't be there to comfort me this time. I love working at the morgue. All the hot women you could ask for. I started measuring how far the trees were from my house. and I think there's something wrong with them. They're 2 meters closer than they were a month ago. Pete was terrified when his nerves screamed and blood started seeping out of his scalp. He found out the hard way that this hair growth formula had unfortunate side effects. "The war has ended," said my dad. "And why are there more alien ships coming?" I heard the dog barking downstairs, so I went to check it out. Then I remembered my mom took the dog to the vet. After the accident, I thought my schizophrenia couldn't get any worse, but now other people can see them too. I always had fun talking with my friends on PS4. That is, until my friend's mother told me he had died a long time ago. My mom came to pick me up from school late when no one else was there. I ran out of the school as fast as I could because we buried her last week. As she sobbed, she felt someone hug her. It was her dad. Then she looked into the face of the skeleton. "It's so good to have you back, Dad." She wondered how they all could have gotten it so wrong. She sighed and snapped her fingers. It was time to reset the universe again. Maybe this time she would get it right. Thank you for joining me for 75 more 2-sentence horror stories submitted by commenters. Really enjoyed putting this together, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. Please post more down below, and join me next week for more terrifying tales. Have a horrifying week.